Okay, good morning, everybody, and apologies for the delay. We had some technical issues on our end. The wonders of technology nowadays. Thank you for coming to this session where we can chat about all good things happening in the Upper Valley, and do appreciate your participation and opportunity to have this kind of dialogue with you. This meeting is being recorded thanks to Jill FitzSimmons, our public information officer. She set that up, and that will be, Jill, if I understand correctly, this will be posted on the county's Facebook account after this here. So if folks want to revisit it or want to share it with others, feel free to do so. We got a fair number of issues that we want to share with you over the next 2 hours or so. And we do have several folks that I've asked, and they have graciously offered to give updates. We've got, starting off, Mike Kaputa with our Natural Resources Department will be giving some updates on a wide range of things going on in the Upper Valley. Both Jill FitzSimmons, our Public Information Officer, and I will be doing some Public Works updates that we'll be doing. And then right at noon, Kirsten Ryles, who is the manager of the short-term rental division of community development, will be here to give a very detailed update on the short-term rental process and how that application process is doing. So that is fairly full right there, but I do hope that we will have enough time at the end. I got some just kind of potpourri issues to cover with you, and to also set aside some time for people to ask questions. I do ask you, everybody, keep their line on mute, and it looks like all of you are very good at this. We're all getting to be experienced Zoomers nowadays, and I'm sure many of you are aware of the raise hand function. If you have a question, and feel free to ask a question at any time, you will see that then down in the bottom, almost center right part of the toolbar at the bottom. And we can go from there. So without any further ado, why don't I pass it over to Mike Kaputa. And Mike, I know you've got some really big ticket stuff that you want to cover with us.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Boogert. And I want to thank everybody for spending your time with us this morning to hear about some updates. And we'd love to get some feedback on a number of things that we're working on. I mean, it really, truly helps us do a better job with the work that we do if we get feedback. And I appreciate, Commissioner Boogert, that you hold these meetings. It's really valuable, I think, at the staff level for us to kind of understand kind of the pulse of the community. I mean, we do a lot of community work, but it's always nice to kind of take the time to do this so we can, it helps influence our work. And so I just want to say thank you to you guys for spending your time with us this morning. I was going to cover a few projects and kind of initiatives that we're working on. Let me just give just a quick list, and I'm certainly happy to answer more questions about these particular things or add things to the list as well if you have questions for us that we hadn't anticipated. I was going to give everybody an update on the Nason Ridge Community Forest, where we are with that project. I want to give you an update on the Chelan County, we call it the Pathways Plan. I think it has a fancier title than that, but we call it the Pathways Plan, and want to give you an update on that. I want to describe to you some of the work that we're doing around water resources in the county, but specifically, in the Upper Wenatchee Valley, and that'll be, we'll talk about water banking, our water code, and the icicle work group. And so I just at least hit at a high level, those three projects and efforts, and if there's additional questions, we can have a discussion about that. Yeah, some of the other stuff was kind of covered under that. So I was going to hit those three, and then we can just see where the conversation goes from there. Bob, does that sound about right for today? And I guess for folks who are attending, does that sound about right to you?
Sounds great, Mike.
Okay. Great. Well, first on the Nason Ridge Community Forest. So this big picture, there's a piece of property that is kind of sandwiched between, it's about 4,000 acres. It's sandwiched between Lake Wenatchee to the north, the Lake Wenatchee Highway to the east, and Highway 2 to the south. And then if you're familiar with that area, Butcher Creek is kind of on the western edge. It's a 4,000 acre contiguous block of property that had been owned by Weyerhaeuser, the local Chelan Douglas Land Trust, and the Lake Wenatchee Community and Western Rivers Conservancy had worked together to temporarily secure that property as a community forest. And so that temporary transition happened about 3 years ago, and the county has been working with those parties to secure funding so that we could transfer ownership to Chelan County. And I think I've given updates to this group before on that, and just wanted to let you know that we're getting very close to signing all of the funding agreements that will contribute funds to that acquisition. And so we've received funding commitments from the state community forest program, various salmon recovery funding board grants. I see Sean here with Chelan PUD, and some of the funds for the acquisition are actually coming from the tributary committee, which is one of the mitigation funds that PUD had established years ago. And so we are anticipating closing on that property and transferring it to the county in early 2022. There's a lot of grant agreements and documentation and paperwork to go through, and it takes time for us to do that. And there's always one more thing to do, with a signature block or an amendment to an agreement or something. So it invariably takes longer than you think it will. And but we're getting pretty close. Been working with a number of partners to make that happen. So that'll be early 2022. We'll close on the property. It's a pretty interesting piece of property. There's a lot of recreational use there. The state park is next door. They groom the trails on that property in the winter, and they've expressed some interest in considering more activities on the property. There's some really nice critical habitat on the property. There's a unique forest type, some old growth riparian on the property. There's been a small moose population out there. It's really kind of a fascinating piece of property. It kind of has it all out there. So we'll do a ribbon cutting probably in June or July of next year. And I think, Bob, we'd love to invite folks to participate in that and see that event. And this is a community forest, right? And so we're going to continue working with all the partners and engaging the community in the management and the use of that property. So we're really excited about the opportunity to play this role, and I just want to invite people to enjoy that piece of property once we own it. Are there any questions or anything, Bob, I may have overlooked in my description of that Nason Ridge property?
No, I think you did a great job, Mike. And I'd like to note that this would be the second community forest that the county is going to assume ownership for. That many of you probably have heard that thanks to Mike's leadership and a lot of work by many parties, there's a community forest up in the Stemilt basin as well. That's approximately the same size, Mike, about 4,000 acres or so.
Yeah, the county ownership is, yes.
Yeah, and so that has got a broad community support and from the Stemilt Partnership, which is basically a collaboration of irrigators, hunters, fishers, skiers, off-road vehicle users, everything like that for management of the land there. And it is really, there's just this trend nationwide to develop and manage forests at a community level for multiple purposes. And this Nason Ridge one will be a classic example of that. And the work that Mike and others have done to secure this funding, this was recognized statewide as the premier one. And for management as a community forest. And there's probably, just in this cycle alone, Mike, once you think there's probably 15 community forests being developed just this year.
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, and but this one was really recognized as the one that really truly fits the needs of the community. And yeah, so we're very excited about this. It's a long time coming. Mike's been working on this for a decade, something like that.
Yeah.
It's coming to fruition. So it is really cool. Can you go a little bit into the management or the memorandum of understanding?
Yeah.
And how that plays out?
Yeah, there's a couple of documents that kind of embody the partnership approach to managing the community forest. One is we have the Nason Ridge Community Forest Management Plan, and we had received some funding from the legislature to develop kind of a multi-use management plan for the property. And that was a big community effort. And we had folks from the Lake Wenatchee area, all the landowners, Forest Service, Parks, Raleigh Schmitten, who has a number of parcels there. And, just working together to kind of lay out how are we going to manage this property. And then we also set up a memorandum of understanding, an MOU between the county and the neighboring property owners. So the Kaler Glen Golf Course, the Forest Service, State Parks, Raleigh Schmitten, and some of his ownership, the Land Trust, and the Forest Service, just to lay out some general terms about how we're going to collaborate and partner on the management across our ownerships, right? So it was an important agreement for the county and the commissioners to establish, so that everybody understood, just at least at a high level, how we were going to work together going into this. What's really interesting about that MOU is that it points to something called a stewardship fund. And, there are invariably going to be some expenses in managing that property. And there are funds available for that. And so we're exploring now setting aside some of those funds that were part of the initial sounding for that property in a special fund, the Nason Ridge Fund, at the Community Foundation. And so Kurt Soper with the Land Trust and myself met with Beth Stipe at the Community Foundation and walked through some of the details of that earlier this week. And so we'll be setting that up probably in January. The thing I like about that fund a lot is that it's with a nonprofit organization. And, if there are special projects that groups or organizations want to advance and do some fundraising for, they can do that kind of on their own. And you can make a tax deductible donation to the Community Foundation to help pay for that. So it's definitely a new model for us as a county. I think it's exciting. I'm really pleased that we're exploring it. And all indications are it's going to work really well. And again, I think that's thanks to all the partners who have helped move that forward. So we're happy to let you guys know about the ribbon cutting next year, and really hope you guys could make it out for that.
Yeah, so you think that'll be sometime right around perhaps June, sometime?
Yeah, I think June would be a good time.
Yeah.
See if we can time it with the moose family, so everybody can see some moose out there.
There you go. Okay. Any questions related to that? I know that we have briefed you periodically related to the development of this, and it has been a while coming. So we're really delighted that we're at this stage now.
Yeah, go ahead, Sean.
Thanks, Mike. And just a question from a PD perspective, just from my own. We were up in that area during the fire season, and it was closed off, so
Yeah.
It was off limits. And so how will that be? Who's going to be managing, making decisions? And I'm sorry if you addressed that, for access to that property.
Yeah, we you're right. I mean, this past summer, and I think a lot of it was early in the summer, it was so hot right, early in the summer, and it got so dry so quickly. There were multiple conversations going on public lands about what to do about access. And I think at the time, Commissioner Franz at DNR had somewhere in there, they closed access to DNR state lands. The Forest Service was considering closures, and we were having meetings between the county commissioners and some of those land managers about how to coordinate on that, right? Because there's access issues and search and rescue and emergency vehicle access issues. So it's fairly complex. In working with Western Rivers Conservancy, and they work with some of the neighbors out there, we kind of collectively made a decision that we should assist in that, and close that property. I think the closure was in effect for maybe 6 to 8 weeks. It wasn't done, I say very elegantly, only to the extent that, it's kind of we were all kind of looking around at what was going on around us, and we had to make a decision there. What we would like to do in the future is establish, with our MOU partners in the community, kind of a process under which we would, be a little more thoughtful about it, right? And just making sure that we're coordinating with everybody. We made some phone calls to some of the neighboring properties. It worked okay, just candidly, it worked okay. But I think in the future, we could certainly, we can plan ahead, for how we want to do those things.
Yeah, not disputing the need. I was just curious. So you answered the question how it might work in the future. So thanks.
Yeah.
I see that Pat has a question about the Community Foundation. And Pat, the Community Foundation is a nonprofit based in Wenatchee under the leadership of their executive director, Beth Stipe. And it serves, as the name implies, the Community Foundation of North Central Washington for Okanagan counties, Douglas County, Chelan County, and a little bit into, I believe, Ferry County, and I believe also Lincoln. But it is as a community foundation. It is a 501c3 organization that manages funds for different nonprofits and for donors for the benefit of the community. And they provide a fair number of grants through that. They have now a corpus of about, I believe, about $100 million. So it's a very prominent community foundation within the state of Washington. Many of the large nonprofits, large and small nonprofits within the area that have endowment funds have them under the management of the Community Foundation. Well, Mike, thank you for sharing the link there. Yep. So example, Chelan Douglas Land Trust has an endowment and a stewardship fund, a permanent stewardship fund. Those are maintained at the Community Foundation, the Wenatchee River Institute, I believe the Met-Hub Conservancy. Many organizations have endowments held and managed by the Community Foundation. They've got a remarkably strong track record of providing that kind of a service and generating income off of those endowments. So this will be, well, as Mike said, that he and Kurt Soper of the Chelan Douglas Land Trust are meeting with the Community Foundation to work out the details, but it'll be somewhat similar to an endowment where the interest garnered off of the corpus will be used for management of this property here. An endowment in the strict sense of the term mandates that the corpus cannot be spent at any time in perpetuity. We don't know if this will be set up that way. We're looking at options and seeing what other types of investment options that we can use so that we can generate long-term revenue off of that fund for management of this property. But Mike can go into detail a little bit about this too, but in getting to this point, we actually worked with Western Rivers Conservancy and others to look at the revenue potential of this property. And there is, part of it is a timber management plan that will be incorporated into our management of this property. And there will be revenue potential that can be generated so that we can indeed manage it in a really proper way that ensures that the forest health and the wildlife benefits, the recreational benefits remain intact.
Yeah.
Did I capture that okay, Mike?
Yeah, you know, it's kind of a pillar of the community forest management plan. You know, there are forest health needs on the property, and you know, we with our partners intend to treat those to get, you know, there's this term called departure, you know, that, you know, forests in our area have departed from what would be their natural condition. You know, they're overstocked, right? There's this really thick with trees, and you know, it creates a lot of environmental challenges and safety challenges. And so we have a harvest schedule to go into some of those areas and do some thinning and some prescribed burning. So it won't be the kind of harvest that you see on, you know, some that you may have seen, you know, recently on some of the Weyerhaeuser properties. You know, these are not industrial timberlands, but you know, there will be some economic benefit of it. And you know, we're excited to do that work and open up the canopy and get healthier trees on the property, and all the environmental benefits that come from that. So those will be really fun projects, I think, for people to get engaged in.
And correct me if I'm wrong too, Mike, that any of this money generated by this forest goes back into the forest. That's
right.
Yeah. So that we hope, you know, that in the long run, this property is going to improve in its forest health and its value.
Yep.
Pat, you had another question there?
Oh, I just wanted to thank you because it seems like this is an ideal project for educating the public. And I really appreciate all that you've accomplished so far. Thanks very much for your answer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Pat.
And Pat, I think Bob, you mentioned it, but I put a link to the Community Foundation in the chat if folks want to know more about the Community Foundation.
Great, thank you.
Okay, looks like there are no more questions, Mike, so maybe we move on to the Pathways Plan.
Yeah, happy to. So another exciting opportunity here, the county and the Port of Chelan County, or the Chelan Douglas Regional Port Authority, and some of the small cities in Chelan County had pooled some funds together about 2 years ago to develop a pathways plan around Chelan County. And so we call it a pathways plan because we're trying to make a distinction between kind of interurban connectivity, say, you know, Manson to Chelan, Monitor to Kashmir, Malaga to Wenatchee, you know, for non-motorized vehicle traffic, versus like trails, which we think, you know, at least in our context, we think of more like dirt trails. So we have a final draft pathways plan that we developed with the steering committee, you know, over the last year and a half, and the plan identifies a number of potential alignments and corridors where we could sort of work with county public works and DOT and private property owners, you know, to provide that kind of connectivity. One thing that's been really interesting that's kind of come up in the last 3 or 4 years, and maybe a little earlier, but you know, there's this term called micro mobility vehicles, right? And so, you know, we used to think of non-motorized as, you know, primarily bicycles, right? But you know, now there are e-bikes and motorized skateboard. I don't even know all the terms, right? But there's a lot of sort of powered vehicles that are not cars, and that was an interesting sort of group of users to consider in a pathways plan. And I think a lot of agencies are kind of struggling with the emergence of a lot of these micro mobility vehicles, rather quickly, and using infrastructure, right? And so, if we have paved trails and we're going to have connectivity to the road system, we have to think about that. We have to plan for that. So we have a final draft plan. We're going to have a workshop with the commissioners coming up here in January to go over the final draft plan, likely go through an adoption process with the county commissioners on that. What we're starting to do now is kind of turning towards an implementation strategy of that. And we have done a lot of outreach in the last couple of months with a number of groups who have expressed interest in advancing, their community's alignments. So the county right now, the county role that we've identified is largely one of coordination to kind of steward the countywide plan. But we're hearing interest from people in Leavenworth, some of the organizations there. The Manson Community Council has an idea of the bay to bay, they call it, connectivity, and then connecting Manson to Chelan. The Malaga-Clackamas Community Council is interested in an extension of sorts, maybe of the loop trail, not an official extension, but just how you connect that community into Wenatchee. And so we have been impressed with the enthusiasm that there is from a number of organizations. Of course, actually implementing an alignment can be complicated, right? Depending on where it actually goes, right? If it's in public right of way, what kind of improvements do you need to make? Who's going to take care of those improvements over time? If there are connectors, say, between county right of way and DOT right of way, how do you design that in the best way, for safety and for recreation, and who's going to manage that? And so we're developing this implementation strategy to identify all the partners who are interested in having these conversations in their communities. One example I'll give, just to maybe be a little more specific about that, would be the Monitor to Kashmir area. We have some maps that show potential alignments on how you could get from Monitor to Kashmir outside of the state highway. And there's 3 different alignments. You could stay on the north side of the highway, you could stay on the south side of the highway, you could even go south of the Wenatchee River if you're familiar, with this area. So there are a number of decisions that have to be made. And so really the next step for that particular one, just as an example, is to do a feasibility assessment. Figure out, okay, well, where does it make sense to try to get people from point A to point B? How does that fit into the larger picture, of connectivity on either end of it? And so there's a fair amount of community work that has to be done too. There's a high potential for user conflicts, with agriculture, with people who are using the traveled roadway. And so while there's enthusiasm, there's a lot of work to do as well. And so I think as we continue to work with partners and do work, for the purposes of this meeting, in the Leavenworth and Upper Valley area, it'll be really important to have the community engaged in this and to get your help. The counties, again, we're helping to coordinate the effort, and in some areas we may play a significant role in terms of advancing an alignment. In other areas we may not, and we really are trying to take the temperature of different communities to see where they are in terms of advancing some of these pathway alignments. So we'll have more community engagement in specific areas around the county in 2022. That would be a significant effort of ours. So let me just pause there, see if Bob, you've been tracking this as we've been developing it. Maybe invariably there's some gaps that that need to be filled there in my description.
No, that you did a great job of covering it, Mike. One thing I do want to do is to acknowledge, to thank the cities that have been involved in this process. I do see that we've got Councilmember Carolyn Wilson here with us. with the city of Leavenworth. And the cities have been instrumental in providing some funding for this and some background information and kind of coordination all the way through. I do want to thank that. So as Mike said, this is something that really working with the community to figure out the next steps on this whole thing and to see if there is a particular entity that is interested in taking the lead on this. Mike did mention the Monitor to Kashmir route, and Mayor Jim Fletcher from Kashmir has just been very instrumental in moving that particular one along. And then Mike said that the Malaga Chelan, what's it, the Bay to Bay process, Mike, that one has moved along at a pretty good clip as well. Mike did mention that the next step in this thing is that after it is adopted by the county commission, it's going to be run by the Chelan Douglas Transportation Council. Mike, is that correct? Sometime in the not so distant future for their
That's right.
concurrence, and that we actually are working with our legislators. We actually met with Representative Gaynor on Tuesday to look into the possibility of a budget proviso for supporting that the feasibility work that Mike mentioned. And we'll keep you posted on that whole business as that proceeds. Any questions? That's a lot to dump on you.
Yeah, and I just want to reiterate there will be many opportunities, and we welcome, more than welcome, engagement on this. Both sort of formally, as part of other organizations and individually. So please, if you have any interest in it, just watch for announcements, and you can reach out to me or Commissioner Bugert directly and just let us know.
Yeah, and I should say that Mike, you've got one in the works with Mayor Fletcher for the city of Kashmir, don't you? Sometime in January for a public meeting related.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, we're going to have a workshop with the Kashmir City Council sometime in January. I could see that, it'd be great to have a Leavenworth City Council meeting workshop as well. And I think that, that'll be part of the kind of rolling out the implementation strategies, the roadshow, right? To kind of get the word. It's been hard, honestly, as you all know. I mean, here we are on a Zoom meeting, right? It's been hard to do the kind of community outreach that we like to do, right? I mean, I think Zoom is a great format, for sharing information, but for sort of working together and collaborating and like looking at maps and drawing stuff, Zoom doesn't really allow us to do that. And so we're really anxious to, have, what we call design charrettes, right? Where we get folks together and have small groups and people can share ideas and work on maps. I mean, this kind of project really needs that kind of attention. And so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to do that next summer.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
Yeah.
Carolyn, I see that you have a question there.
Yes, I was just going to say that to Mike and to you, Commissioner, to be sure to reach out to us in Leavenworth, and we can get a workshop going. Because I do know for years we've wanted pathways, and I'll call it. But so yeah, reach out to us and we'll get a workshop together.
Okay.
Yeah.
I will follow up on that, Carolyn. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, perhaps we ought to, it doesn't look like there are any other questions, so perhaps we ought to move on then to some of the water resource issues, which is always a big issue, that's for sure.
Yes.
Ever increasing issue.
Yes. Slightly, at least topically, slightly drier conversation. No pun intended there with talking about water resources. But you guys know the saying, right? Whiskey's for drinking, water's for fighting over. And, there's certainly been over the last 15 years, a lot of Supreme Court cases, Washington State Supreme Court cases, and, just challenges, around water resources. You know, there are just so many competing values. You know, particularly in the Wenatchee Valley, when you look at the in-stream flow needs for fish, the out-of-stream needs for agriculture and domestic and commercial and industrial use. And, you know, there's only so much water to go around, right? And we've commissioned through some of the other groups we work with, you know, studies from the UW Climate Impacts Group. And, you know, and the stream flow projections are not getting better, right? They're getting worse. And so I think it just, you know, it just kind of exacerbates, you know, the already sort of competing uses for water. And so, you know, kind of giving that context, you know, the county has, we've moved into kind of water resources management more and more over the years. You know, we started taking on some responsibilities in the Wenatchee around an in-stream flow rule that the Department of Ecology had established with working with the community. You know, we've all been part of this. But, you know, we've just seen more and more need for the county to have a more robust water resources program. And so earlier this year, the commissioners adopted a water code. The water code helped establish the structure countywide for the county to participate more formally in the building permit process and track some of the water supplies and what we call reserves in different parts of the basins, and in particular in the Wenatchee Basin. You know, there's a fairly elaborate system of water reserves, you know, that are set aside for future growth, but they're not unlimited. You know, there's some significant limitations in Icicle Creek, Mission Creek, Chumstick Creek. And so the code helps us kind of track that a little better and also think about how do we secure future water supply. We operate more and more like a municipality, like the city or the PUD, where we have to, you know, for people who are looking for water in rural areas, you know, we have to assure that there is adequate supply available. You know, and if we can't do that, you know, that has sort of profound implications for our building permit process. And so we've been very aggressive about ensuring that there is water there. We're also been very supportive of improving in-stream flows. And, you know, we're doing more work around irrigation efficiencies, water acquisitions, working with property owners. And so we really have kind of a multifaceted water resources program. We coordinate quite a bit with the cities, with Leavenworth and Kashmir. We work a lot with irrigation districts. One thing I just wanted to talk about very specifically around our water code is that, you know, when you apply for a building permit now in the Wenatchee Basin, there's a water fee that's associated with that. And that we implemented that in April of this year. And it's actually gone, in terms of the rollout of the code, it's gone very smoothly. The fees are, they're not insignificant, but I think they're generally kind of modest. You know, it's about $1,000 for a water mitigation fee and $1,000 for processing. We've worked very well with community development to implement that program. I don't know if any of you on the call this morning have had any personal experience with that, but we're always interested in knowing how we're doing with that program. It's a brand new program this year. We think it's been going pretty well. We've had very quick turnaround on it. We haven't seen any delays in the building permit process. The folks at community development have done just a marvelous job of figuring out how to streamline it. But on that water code, you know, we are always very receptive to input on how we could be doing it differently or how we could be doing it better. And so I'd say if you have any input on that, please reach out to Commissioner Boogert or myself or Jill or whomever, you know, just to let people know, because we really do want to continue making sure that process is rolling out really well. I would say too, in the particular kind of specific to the Leavenworth area, you know, the county the city of Leavenworth, and a number of stakeholders, tribes, irrigation districts, federal agencies have been participating for 9 years now in an organization called the Icicle Work Group. And we've been working on what we call the Icicle Strategy. It's an integrated water resource strategy, kind of more of the same theme, where we're trying to accommodate and come up with solutions to provide water for a number of uses, right? And the Icicle is, it probably embodies, all of the Western water challenges in one watershed, where we have, the Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery, which is mitigation for Grand Coulee Dam for the tribal fishery, is in Icicle Creek. The city of Leavenworth has a water supply there. The Icicle Irrigation District diverts water from there, and the Cascade Orchard Irrigation Company. That's a lot of competition for water. Most of the watershed is in the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, and the irrigation district in the early 1900s built reservoirs there, which are in need of repair. And so there's, very intense conversations going on about how to continue to supply water, maintain the infrastructure, maintain and protect and maybe enhance the wilderness values of the Alpine Lakes Wilderness, and provide water for everybody. We also have very ambitious in-stream flow improvement targets in Icicle Creek. We want to have 60 CFS during drought years and 100 CFS minimum during non-drought years. Right now during a drought year, the flow can get down to about 8 CFS, right? So this would be a substantial improvement there. But of course, how do you do that, right, with all these competing uses? So there have been some interesting projects that have been implemented so far, and the Leavenworth National Fish Hatchery is doing a lot of modernization. The irrigation district is working through some conservation efforts and a conservation plan. And so I think the future is bright for Icicle Creek, but it's difficult, challenging work. And we have, again, a number of partners, something like 20 partner organizations working through that. Again, because of the pandemic, we haven't done quite as much direct public engagement as we would have liked. We did recently produce a couple of videos that kind of tell the Icicle story. And I was thinking, Bob, we should share those videos with this group. I don't think they're not quite final, I don't believe, or they're very close to being final. And so I think we can maybe in anticipation of a future meeting, we can provide those links to those videos in advance.
Yeah, those are Vimeo that you can just share the links for.
Yep.
Done by North 40, the local videographer.
Yep.
Mike, there's a couple of follow-up questions here.
Let
me see. Similar to this, Bob Keller's asking about the pond activity on Eagle Creek. I assume that's the alluvial water storage. Could you briefly touch bases on that? And then there's Sean has got a follow-up question that we could do too.
Yeah, okay. Hey, Bob Keller, would you mind maybe elaborating on your question a little bit?
Yes, actually, in a meeting that I attended the other day, Bob Bugert, Commissioner Boogert, had mentioned that there was some activity up on Eagle Creek in the northern area to do water infiltration on the creek. And I'm just wondering what that consisted of and what the progress was on that.
Yeah, happy to share that. And there's actually a lot of activity coming up in Eagle Creek. We have been working with a number of private property owners to improve fish passage. There are a lot of culvert barriers to fish going up Eagle Creek. And we're working on 14 fish barrier projects right now. We have funding for some, and we're securing funding for others. But we can see our way clearly to have unfettered access for steelhead in particular up Eagle Creek at some point in the future. So that it's been pretty exciting to work with particularly the landowners in lower Eagle Creek and get some funding for that. The project you're talking about is in Upper Eagle Creek. It's actually on, it was Weyerhaeuser property. Weyerhaeuser sold all their, I don't know if everyone's up to speed on this, but Weyerhaeuser sold all of their holdings in Chelan County to Hampton. Hampton has a mill over in Darrington, but then Hampton turned around and sold it to this new organization called the Chinook Forest Partners. And that just happened recently. So there's been a couple of changes in ownership there just in this year. So the reason I described that is because we did the project on, I never know what to call it, right? So, it was on Weyerhaeuser property. That's who we negotiated the agreement with. And what we have found, and we did a study on this in the Wenatchee Basin, that there's a lot of incision from streams. Streams, sort of pre impact, or before development impact or before grazing impact. Streams would meander a lot more. They would access the floodplain. There'd be larger riparian areas. But as we kind of expanded, the population in Chelan County, and this is true, most places, we really simplified those riparian areas in those floodplains. And what that does for water and for streams is they just cut straight down. They don't meander anymore, right? Because there's nothing really kind of stabilizing the stream banks. So in Eagle Creek, there's quite a bit of this down cutting and this incision in Upper Eagle Creek. And so we did a project up there to improve that. And you basically can, using the logs and trees and other sort of natural vegetation and riparian plantings, you can restore the natural elevation of a creek. You kind of move it from that incised shape, to kind of a plate shape, and allow it to move around. And so we did that project in Upper Eagle Creek. We just finished that in October. That actually would be a fun field trip to do at some point as well. When we start meeting in person again together, take a look at that. And so then the idea is that you restore the water supply by holding it back a little bit longer. It's filtered through groundwater more, and so the temperature stays cooler. The riparian area can reestablish itself. So they're pretty interesting projects, and we're actually doing a number of them in different tributaries across the Wenatchee Basin in Icicle Creek, Kaler Creek, Camas Meadows up at that natural area preserve on Shaston Creek, East Fork of Mission Creek out of Cashmere. We have like 3.5 miles of this work we're going to be doing. So I'm glad you brought that up, because it's this is one of many projects that we're going to be implementing over the years in the Wenatchee Basin.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
This is going to be a great tool as far as Mike mentioning the water supply issues and being exacerbated by climate change and the change in the hydrograph that is occurring in the late summer flows, the challenges we may have with late summer flows. Mike, with that in mind, Sean asked about, can we have a quick update on the climate resilience strategy and how we're doing with that whole process?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So a number of partners last year helped pull together the first Chelan County climate resilience strategy, and the county, the PUD, state DNR, and others coordinated to do that. And so now we're moving into implementing the climate resilience strategy, and we had the first the kickoff meeting of what we call the Climate Resilience Roundtable just here in very late October, early November, and just trying to set up the committee basically who would kind of oversee implementation of the plan, kind of understand what organizations are interested in what components of the plan, and trying to move those things forward. So there's things in there like improve water supply, address forest health issues. There's some social equity issues in there, reaching out to kind of underserved populations who may be adversely affected and disproportionately affected by climate change impacts. And so we have just a number of groups and some pretty exciting projects that we're going to be moving forward in the future. I think you'll see a lot of activity from that group in 2022. And I know Sean is, I had heard a rumor, Sean, you might be retiring. And so we know then you'll have a lot of extra time to participate in these committees. So we're certainly looking forward to seing you more on it.
Oh, well, thank you, Sean, for doing that. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't hear any of that,
Yeah.
but if I am around, I definitely will stay engaged in this process. I think it's important, and a lot of good work can come out of it.
Yeah, it's a good product, to be sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Betsy, you have a question?
Yeah, I just think that part of the Eagle Creek project we might have benefited more in terms of water savings and riparian maintenance. Not necessarily from this ponding project, which resulted after a significant major clear cutting in the uplands, road building, which resulted in erosion into the streams. There are some significant impacts on the watershed from all of those upland projects that I think many of us don't feel have been necessarily mitigated or provide for the future very effectively by this ponding, quote unquote, project. So I think it's unfortunate that, we've allowed a lot of destruction of the watershed to occur. And now we're trying to kind of patch it up with these catchment basins. So I guess my question is, I'm not, in terms of climate resilience and riparian habitat and general watershed, I would hope that in the future we could address some of the issues that caused the initial serious damage to the landscape and watershed as a much better alternative to what's occurred recently. So,
well, thank you.
question,
Betsy.
sorry.
Yeah, well, thank you for your comment there. Yeah, a lot of that, I believe, as Mike mentioned, that was completed by Weyerhaeuser.
Oh, I know.
Prior to their sale of that property. They, in turn, in order to do that, they have to go through the Forest Practices Board, which is a independent body that is staffed by the State Department of Natural Resources, and they are to review the impacts and the process for how they do that, and then actually to get permitted. And so it was
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
Permitted activity. So there's little that the county itself can do, though we do recognize that it does. Some of the areas were very heavily impacted. We agree.
Yes. And obviously, if it's going to be a group effort, the county should be more involved as far as I'm concerned. So but anyway, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Betsy. Any other questions or thoughts for Mike? If not, then it's right at noon. So we do have Kirsten Ryles, who is, as I said, the manager who's taken the tremendous step and has really advanced our program so much. She's the manager of the short-term rental division of the community development. And so Kirsten is kind of give us an update on the application process for both the existing and the new short-term rental managers there. So, and Mike, I want to thank you for everything you've done and for the great update. And we'll move on now to Kirsten. Looks like you're ready to go. So thank you, Kirsten, for joining us.
You bet. So update. So as of today, we have processed for provisional permits for existing owners, 327. In our inbox, we have at the last count, 227 applications, but that is a mix of existing and new. We do need to process all of the existing first, so that we know that'll let us know if we can adjust the capital. So if we can take any more of the new applications. The new applications are being not only date stamped, but timed when they come in, so that we are sure to process them in order of receipt. So it's fair to everybody. Let's see. And of course, existing applicants still have until the end of this year, or actually December 30th, to get those applications in, because the offices are closed on December 31st for New Year's Eve. And then the new applicants, they actually have until mid-year to apply if they'd like.
How is that process doing with the new applicants? How's it playing out?
So the new applicants, like I said, so they're being not only date stamped, but time stamped when they come in. But we are not processing any new applicants right now. We're trying to focus on the existing, so that they can continue business, because as of the first of the year, it's awful for them to continue operation without a permit. So that's our priority right now, is getting the existings processed so they can continue business, and then we will dive into the new.
Okay, really good.
Are there any questions I can answer? Does anybody have any anything they're not clear about that I can help clarify, or any other questions?
Yeah, it looks like we have two, Kirsten. Let's start off with Maureen. Do you have a question?
Hi there. This may be too detailed, but do you have any sense of how many applications have come in from the 98826 area for existing?
Yeah, I don't have a number. I can tell you I've seen a lot, but I don't have a number yet.
Okay.
Once we get things squared away, I'll be able to quantify that for you. But right now, we're just processing as fast as we can.
It's a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Clearly, there are, at this point, a good number of existing that have not submitted applications, correct?
Correct.
Can you, Kirsten, can you kind of explain the process that you kind of went far and wide with a lot of the notices through media and both within the county and outside the county, with a lot of emphasis on Puget Sound area to notify
Yes.
people?
Well, fortunately for me, Jill, our public information officer, put out a lot of the notices. So fortunately, that was taken off my plate so I could focus on the actual details of getting this whole process going. But it did go. It went far and wide all over the state. In addition, we've done multiple radio informationals, as well as NCW Life. I did that with Commissioner Gehring, talking specifically all about short-term rentals. So I feel like it's really gotten out there. I'm always surprised when I hear from somebody that says they've known nothing about this, especially since it's been in process for over 2 years. So that always surprises me a little bit. Everybody here at the office is ready, willing, and able to answer questions, and we have answered, I would probably say at this point, probably thousands of emails and phone calls answering questions, trying to help people clarify and get through the process as well as we can. To answer the other question in a little bit of a numbers status. So when the data scrape was done, they figured that there was about 1,300 and I believe 88 unique addresses that were advertising on various platforms in Chelan County. So if you start with a number of 1,388, and like I said, we've processed 327, and then we've got another 200 some in the box. So that's not even going to get us to 600 at this point. So we're roughly at about half. So if those existings don't get their permits in and or are not permitted due to legality issues, whether they don't have the parking to support their number of bedrooms, or if their septic system doesn't to support them, or, we have found some illegal structures that, obviously we don't permit those. So then we're going to focus on getting the new applicants processed. And then once we get everybody taken care of, then it'll roll to actually code enforcement, where we will do another data scrape of all the platforms and find out who's still operating without a permit. And then we'll have discussions there.
Thank you.
Zelda, you had a question?
Yeah, I do want to give a shout out to Kirsten and to Louise, because they have answered innumerable questions. I can only imagine. I do caution this whole process, because it has not been easy. It's been very difficult and cumbersome, and more so than it ever needed to be. And I want to just stress here that I am not talking on behalf of STRAC. I had to resign from STRAC due to a death in the family, so I am only talking for myself. But there's been comment that everybody's happy with the way this process is going, and the majority of the STRs are happy with how things are happening. And I just want to caution you guys, it's not that we're happy, we're afraid. We're afraid that you're going to come and pull our permits. When it's been made very clear that the permits we have are provisional, it feels very much like the county is going to do anything to take our livelihoods away. And so I just want to caution in that we're not happy, we're just afraid. So we're keeping quiet. And I just got tired of hearing how great it's going. Although, again, Kirsten and Louise do deserve huge kudos, because they can't possibly have known what they were getting into. So I just wanted to make those comments. You have a lawsuit coming from one group. You're receiving attorney letters from STRAC. You are denying permits left and right that with our code interpretation should not have been denied as a tier 2. So I just want to caution, it's not all rosy. And I also think that there are not 1,300 STRs, nor did we ever think that there were 1,300 STRs. That was a run. I know it's a data scrape, but still you were getting multiple listings more than once. And it was a run number that run wanted to go with. And so I think that you are getting, because STRAC only had 280 members at one point. So I think the numbers we're seeing are fairly realistic. I don't think you're going to find 50% of the people operating without a permit after December 31st.
So I hope not. And I do appreciate your comments. There have been some denials. I wouldn't say that it's left and right. I would say that the majority of the denials that I personally have handled have been for illegal structures, or for properties with more than one dwelling on the parcel, and the owner does not live in one of them, which is part of the building code in Chelan County. And I want to reiterate too that, I mean, the whole idea of doing a provisional permit is to get everybody at least something so they can continue operation. Because to do what I refer to as the deep dive into everybody's permit, it takes a substantial amount of time, which would make your timeline drag out so far that you wouldn't be able to operate for potentially months while we get these processed, because it does take a long time to do a full and complete review of a property. So that's why we did the provisionals. And the idea or the intent is not to take away everybody's livelihood, but to make sure that they are proceeding with their business in a legal manner and in safe and legal structures.
Kirsten, I do have a question for you. When they come out to inspect for the permit, somebody told me that the only inspection that was happening was the fire inspector, and he was inspecting for the permit too, the STR permit. Is that correct?
Yeah, so when most people are paying for their provisional permit this year, they're also paying for the fire marshal inspection that'll happen in 2022. And that certification is what you'll need when you come to renew your permit for 23. So just a note there. But yeah, so when the fire marshal comes out to do that inspection, it is specific to short-term rentals. A lot of what he will look at is what many of you filled out on your self-inspection forms. But he will look for other things as well. Indicators that people are using spaces that are for bedrooms that don't have a legal egress, that kind of thing. But yeah, that is the inspection. And in the case that there end up being too many inspections for the fire marshal to handle himself, Chris Young, our building official, has said that we could use the building inspectors if we needed to make sure that everybody got inspected before the renewal deadline.
So he'll be checking the fire inspector will be checking the property management plan and all of that.
Yeah, he'll make sure that that's in the binder on the property. Or yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
You bet.
Yeah, thank you, Zelda. Are there any other questions or comments, ideas related to the short-term rental process? And we do appreciate your patience and flexibility as this whole thing has proceeded. It's a major undertaking, and we're learning a lot as we go, that's for sure. Maureen, I see you briefly raised your hand. Did you have another question?
Sorry, no, just
Oh, okay.
wanted to make sure I had it down. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, really good. Yeah. Okay. Well, Kirsten, I know you got a lot on your plate, and you probably got a stack on your desk there that's
I
probably
do.
as tall as the Eiffel Tower. So if there are no other questions for Kirsten, thank you. Perhaps it'd be a good time for you to move on. And we got other issues that Jill and I can cover here. So
Thank you very much.
okay, thank you again, Kirsten. Okay, well, we do have a number of issues that we do want to discuss with you. A lot of them related to the upcoming winter and some of the public works issues. And Jill, how's your share screening capabilities? You want me to do that, or I can?
I should be able to.
Okay.
Okay, is it working? Looks like I'm there, yeah?
Looks like it's part of the website there.
Yeah, I wanted to go through
Oh,
that
okay.
first.
Okay,
You
really good.
wanna-
Yep.
Bob, you want to talk about snow first or preservation?
Either way is fine with me.
All right. Well, I'll just go over preservation real quick, because you do have some coming your way next summer. And probably the first indication was this past summer, you should have seen our road crews out doing crack sealing. And that's usually an indicator that they're going to be coming back for that pre-level and chip seal work. On our website, I'd just like to point this out to people. When you're talking about preservation, you're going down to Public Works. That's our road department. This website will lead you through how roads are rated. We get a lot of questions about, why aren't you on my road this year? And it talks about how we rate the roads and how they come about, the chip sealing process, what to expect, some tips about when the crew is on your road, what's going to happen. I will update this list over here, probably in the next couple months with the 2022 listing. And we also have the map on here. If you want to zoom in and see where that preservation is going to be next year. And I do have that separately too, just so that we can take a look through it. For next year, you're going to see some, of course, Cedar Brae Road. Quite a bit of it is going to be done next year. Also, we've got some stuff off of Chihuahua Loop Road. We always try to do a portion, it's not on here, a portion of Chumstick. I know there is some, I can pull up that other graphic as well. This is the 2023 program. Let's go back to the map here.
So the yellow is 2023 and the red
Yes,
is
and the orange is
2022.
2022. That lower portion of Eagle Creek Road will be done next year. We've got a little stretch here on Chumstick Highway. And that always causes issues with travel because that is one of our most heavily trafficked road in the county. So just kind of some heads up. We start throwing out, the crews will start working in late spring on this work. It'll, like I said, it will come back. They will have to do the pre-level first, then they'll be back to do chip sealing. So there'll be 2 interruptions there with traffic for chip seal next year. This is all 2023. And then of course that Cedar Bray area. And we've got a little bit here off 207. So that's just coming your way. And I know that Public Works wanted us to talk a little bit too about snow plows and our snow plowing efforts. Come on. Is this too small, Bob?
Yeah, that's getting bigger. If you could
Okay.
make it a little bit larger.
Okay.
There you go. That's great.
So for our snow plowing, I just want to go over real quickly kind of the difference between our snow crew and a state road crew. Our county snow plows only work on weekdays. We have a very limited force on the weekends. It's actually 1 driver in most districts. They get to work about 5 a.m. We do not plow 24/7 like the state does. Our guys are, our operators are on a schedule. Their trucks, just to remind people, plowing from the front, but watch out for that anti-icing material that comes from the back. That's sand and the anti-icer. Our snowplow operators, they move very quickly. They need to be getting through these roads in a matter of minutes. So anything you can do to help them out, like getting those garbage cans immediately off the road after waste management has come around, and they are very thankful for that. Just a reminder that they clear those priority 1 routes, and those are typically school bus routes. Our operators are getting out to get those school bus routes open quickly so the kids can get to school. And also a reminder, not all county roads are plowed. I do get several phone calls a year once the snow starts to fly, typically from people who have just moved into our county and they're not familiar with that, a dirt road is not going to be plowed. But I think you folks are probably all very familiar with those sorts of procedures. Public Works wanted me to go over some snowplow safety tips. When you're approaching one of our plows, please pull to the right as safely as possible. And we're not asking you to go off the road, just to get away from that center line. Our plows are typically about, I think it's about 16 feet across, and county roads, as you know, some of our roads are pretty narrow. So that blade may be coming over a couple inches, so stay away from that center line, please. Watch for snow or debris coming off the plow. Those plows have a tendency to toss things. And when you're pulling out of your driveways, especially in your areas, I know that there's some visibility issues. Please don't assume that the operator can see you. If you're following a county plow truck, stay back about 150 feet. It's never a good idea to pass a plow. Most of the time, our drivers, if they see several cars lining up behind them, they will pull over when it's possible, when it's safe for them to let everyone by. And be on the alert if you're behind a snowplow. Of course, they may need to stop suddenly or sometimes swerve if there's a car parked along the side of the road. And also watch for that sand coming out of the sander on the back. You don't want that all over your car. That is not fun.
Speaking of
Ours-
which, can I ask you a quick
Sure.
question about that, Jill? So if I recall, it isn't part of the Upper Valley to be treated with this blue sand now? And can you
Yes,
talk a little
our
bit about
blue,
that?
yes, our blue de-icer. It was, I got a lot of phone calls from the press over that. The foreman wanted me to send something out because they didn't want it to be shocking for people to see this icer that we've switched over to this year, because it's a funny color. It's a bright blue. But it's supposed to be more efficient. It's cheaper for the county. And in the end, we will use less salt because of this new product that we're using. So if you see blue on the roadway, that's our new de-icer.
And isn't part of the deal, Jill, that this is not as corrosive?
Right, and it's not as
to
corrosive. It's I can't off.
calcium chloride?
What's that?
Is it calcium chloride? Is the
Yes,
active?
yes, but it has less calcium chloride too. Yes. And kind of in that same vein, just remember, because we live in a 4-season snow area, you should be washing the undercarriage of your car during the winter. I'm from Wisconsin, and when I'm home, oh my goodness, I know I'm home. Everything is covered in rust. That's just not the case out here in Wenatchee. Okay. Also, this is something we like to share with people. We do have this also up on our website, just some reminders. Boy, people hate those snow wrinkles that the plows cause at the end of your driveways. Really, they're unavoidable because the plow drivers are moving so quickly through the area. They cannot get out and shovel out people's driveways. I apologize for those, but it's just something that comes with the whole show around here. Snow damage, we do get phone calls. Our plow drivers are not trying to hit things. They and usually what is being hit is that snow coming off the blade. It's not the blade itself. And it has a tendency to knock over mailboxes that are in the right of way or those garbage cans that are out. So, but if you feel like something's been happened, not good, you can always give us a call and fill out a service request as well on our website. Stranded vehicles, please don't call the county. You'll need to call Rivercom's Emergency Dispatch Center, their business line. Or if you're really in trouble, please call 911. Not shoveling the snow onto the roadway, that's actually a big one. We see a lot of that. And I try to tell people it really is a hazard if it could turn to ice, and not only for our plow drivers, but especially for other motorists. So please throw that snow back onto your lawns rather than in the roadway. Sidewalks, you guys don't have them. That's more up in Manson. And fire hydrants, I've got one in my neighborhood. The county crews do not clear out fire hydrants. That's something that is on homeowners and neighbors. I know I've just got done talking to the fire district, Chelan 1, their PIO, and she is putting something out saying they would be greatly appreciative if you do that for your neighborhood. And just kind of a last reminder, when they see our snowplows, get people very excited. I can tell you that on the Facebook page, they love our snowplow operators, but please keep the kids away from them. You don't know what's in that snow when it's coming off the blade. There could be rocks in there. Just kind of keep your kids safe. Trying to see here. And lastly, if we've got here, I just do want to show you where those priority routes are. We've got another map here that tells you what the roads are every winter that we're going to hit first, second, and third. We also have broken them down on our website into maps. So if you need, to have one at home or something, you can run that off and it shows you just exactly what roads we're hitting first, second, and third. So.
And all this stuff is available right on the website, so people
Yep,
can
right on
access
our
it.
website.
Okay. Well, thank you, Jill.
Sure. Did anybody have any questions? Or I know snow plowing season can be a little frustrating at times, but our crews are out there early. They get done about 1:30 in the afternoon until they're back in at 5 in the morning. They're working hard, so I can promise you that.
And I believe, aren't we short-staffed? I've noticed we've got several ads in the paper, isn't it?
Yeah, we do have a couple. We're not necessarily short-staffed. We're down a couple. We're doing pretty good. Our issue is we have a lot of new snowplow operators this year who will be training. They've been out kind of running in their trucks the last few weeks. So we have some newbies out there. So we
right?
just kind of ask that you get a little patient with them.
Okay, well, thank you, Jill.
Sure.
And let me see if I can actually try my hand at trying to find the Cascade Orchard Bridge.
Are you looking for it on GIS or are you?
No, I have a PDF here.
Okay.
There it is. Okay, hopefully people can see that. Jill, can that be seen?
Looks good.
Okay, really good. So this, thanks to some work by our Public Works Department, they were able to receive some funding, grant funding to upgrade the Cascade Orchard Bridge. That's the bridge on Icicle Road that goes up towards Sleeping Lady and the Enchantments and beyond. And so there was a need for a deck repair on this, and they were able to get some additional funding. And then the county, we are accessing some of our general funds as well to contribute this, to actually expand this, to make it safer and to allow for better bicycle and pedestrian capability. So if you could see this here, what I'm pointing at with my little cursor here, this is the existing area. And so the piers and everything like that will remain the same, but both the shoulders will be enhanced on either side and reached out a little bit further. You can see there's the utility, and I believe that's Cascade Orchard Irrigation District pipe underneath that will still be there to convey. But the deck on both sides will be extended here to allow for better pedestrian and bicycle safety. So the entire thing will be resurfaced, but this will be expanded here to allow for safety, better driver safety, better pedestrian, and better bicycle safety. This, I believe, is starting the second quarter of 2022, so not that far off. They do have all the funding in place. The engineering is pretty much there. And so I don't think the contract has been set out yet, but there's nothing to my knowledge that should be holding up this process. So it's this will be a big project. And so obviously you'll be hearing from Jill, because she'll be putting out notices as far as traffic reroutes or delays, anything like that may occur at that time. I see you've got some questions here. Pat, you start with you.
Oh, thanks, Bob. Which bridge is this? Is this the bridge that's close to town?
Yeah, it is. I'd say probably 2 miles up, something like that. And
wow, that is wonderful. I was part of a citizens action group that did fundraising to slow down the
Yeah.
speed there. And I've,
Yeah.
this is wonderful. Thank you so much. Wow, that's great news.
Yeah, we heard from many folks about their concerns about this. So this became a priority for our public works, and they did a good job of securing outside funding to be able to carry the bulk of it, and then the county supplemented it.
That's huge. Thanks.
Yeah. Carolyn, you have a question?
That was my question. So thank you very much for that answer. I just needed that clarification also.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Sean, I saw that you had your hand up there for a second.
We are all on the same page, just trying to
All right.
understand this. Was the Icicle Road Bridge or the East Leavenworth Road Bridge? So thanks.
Icicle Road Bridge. Yep. Yep. Yeah, evidently it's called Cascade Orchard Bridge because it carries the, to my understanding, you see this pipe here that's underneath, that is part of the Cascade Orchard Irrigation District conveyance right there. But yeah, so it's on its way.
Yeah, and I just want to add that there will be a lot of traffic impacts with that. So if you get on the project listserv, which I will put up on our website, or you can just drop me an email too. That way you have a heads up on what's going on, or watch our Facebook as well.
Yeah, thank you, Jill. Yep. Yeah, getting done with the West Kashmir Bridge and moving on to the next one. Yeah, so, okay. Jill, are there any other public works issues that we missed? I think those are the key ones, weren't they?
Yeah, I think the bridge is going to be a big one, and as well as that preservation up at Lake Wenatchee. Those are going to be some big traffic impacts this year.
Yeah, I can believe it. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to move into, did anybody have any questions right off the bat? And I can move into some more of the various issues that are kind of fall into various sources. Doesn't sound like it. What I'd like to share is, let me start off with the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee. They've been very active this year. We've got a fairly healthy fund that we are working on, and the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee reviewed a fair number of applications that the applications were advertised and went out in August, September, and got a fair number of applications received for events. And then there'll be another one coming up here in the not so distant future for capital projects. But the lodging tax, they reviewed these applications, scored them against a scoring matrix, and they awarded about $208,000 this year for a variety of tourism-related projects and festivals. So this is something that's done annually by the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee to events and agencies. That the purpose of this funding, it is a tax on lodging facilities, and a specific use by statute is to attract visitors to our area to promote tourism, who hopefully then will be staying overnight in our lodging establishments. So this year for the events and activities, 16 groups or nonprofit entities were funded. They'll use the money in a variety of efforts, from marketing and outreach to festivals, museum exhibits, and event guest speakers, things like that. I looked through the 16, and some for the Upper Valley that you will know and love. Leavenworth Summer Theater received some funding. Leavenworth Village Voices. The Greater Leavenworth Museum, which is really cranking nowadays. Really nice to see what they've got going on. The Autumn Leaf Festival. And then the Wenatchee River Institute has got its May Bird Fest, and funding was provided for each of those. They will be announcing, the Lodging Tax Committee just met yesterday to come up with the final construct and criteria for the capital projects. And my understanding, quickly talking with the folks on LTAC, that that'd probably be going out sometime in January, February, those grant applications. And so you should be seeing that announced shortly. And I'm sure Jill will be doing an all points bulletin for that one. Yeah, Jill, did I miss anything, or do you want to add anything?
The capital round will open on January 10th.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yes, and folks will have 1 month to get those applications in. And I know there were several applications for the capital. We will have a new application, so those will have to be redone. And it looks like we'll have about $560,000 to give away with the capital.
Is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah.
And when do those due then? Do you know?
Those will be due on February 10th.
Okay, so basically 1 month, 30 days.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Okay, and you will, I'm sure, get far and wide, and we'll go on the radio and everything like that to announce that. Yeah. One of the other things that we are setting up here, and this is something that is actually allowed under the Growth Management Act state statute, and is something that we're doing in concert with the 5 cities in Chelan County, that'd be Wenatchee, Eniat, Chelan, Kashmir, and Leavenworth, is to set up what's called the Boundary Review Board. And this is a quasi-judicial independent body that oversees the annexation of lands by the cities. And it's composed of 5 members that are jointly appointed by the county, the cities, and the governor's office. And so this group is just up and running. We're really pleased with how they are taking it on. And really, this is going to be providing a critical review of annexations and overall growth by municipalities. So the Boundary Review Board reviews the appropriateness of annexations by cities within their urban growth areas. And they look at transportation issues within it, public works, public safety, and other factors to see how have those issues been appropriately thought through during the annexation process. And does this, really basically look, does this annexation make sense? And so what benefits does it provide to the citizens within that annexation area? Is it a benefit to those to be incorporated into cities? And so there are a number of annexation activities, projects that are under consideration right at this time. So this group is definitely going to hit the ground running. So the whole thing is to try to get growth that occurs in a logical and sequential process with the adequate public involvement and consideration of all the components. This has been done, there's 39 counties within the state, and I think 26 counties have boundary review boards, and it really has been shown to be a very effective tool for addressing growth in a very logical, appropriate manner. So we're very hopeful. So this group is, as I said, it is a semi-autonomous, it is an autonomous body, but it is managed, supported, staffed by Chelan County, primarily by our assessor's office, but also by our community development, and also thankfully to Jill. It's an independent body. They do have some limited statutory authority, and they've got their work cut out for them. Oh, Jill, thank you. So Jill just put up onto the county, on the county's website, we have a link that gives a greater explanation of the role and function of the Boundary Review Board. Just for your information, one of the gubernatorial appointees to this Boundary Review Board is Dwayne Gaynor, who lives up in the Leavenworth area. Some of you may know Dwayne. Betsy, I see you have a question.
Yes, I believe you said there were 5 members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there a member from each of the municipalities?
No, it's an interesting thing, and it's really specifically set up in statute how it is to work, Betsy. So the 5 members, one is to be appointed by the county, and that is Larry Cordes. Sean, you may know Larry. He's an engineer with Chelan PUD, and he's got really good experience in these types of issues. One is collectively appointed by the 5 cities together. And so that person is past Wenatchee Mayor Dennis Johnson, who graciously agreed to serve on this. Dennis knows these issues up and down, left and right. The governor then appoints 2. And so several people applied for that position through the governor's office. And Aaron Young, who used to be on the Planning Commission for Chelan County and lives in the Malaga area, was appointed by the governor. And then Dwayne Gaynor, who is very active in community issues, lives in Leavenworth, was appointed by the governor as well. Those 4 individuals, then they themselves appoint their 5th individual, the 5th member. They are in the process of going through this review process. They are actually meeting next week on the 15th to review some of those applications. If any of you are interested in this, get a hold of me and I can kind of give you a little bit more of a lowdown on it. And then if you are interested, you could submit your name and application to the Boundary Review Board to serve. So it's a very important component of some of our land management and transportation elements, growth elements that the county is dealing with. So yeah, get a hold of me if interested.
Thank you.
Here's one that Joe will like here as well, is that our Chelan County, we've got our moderate risk waste facility that we're very proud of. I know I have mentioned it to you folks in the past that we've got this thing up and running. That recently we received a Smart Communities Award through the governor's office. This is given annually by the governor's office and the State Department of Commerce for exemplary work in community service. And they felt that our moderate risk waste facility did indeed warrant the 2021 award, which is pretty cool. So this is a joint work, and Carolyn Wilson, I want to thank you again. This is joint work with the cities, the 5 cities within Chelan County, that we jointly manage the moderate risk waste facility. For those of you who don't know, it's out on 97A, just right past DeMilt, on the opposite side there. A state-of-the-art facility that we receive funding from many different grants and sources to build this thing. And it is off to a tremendous start as far as being able to take moderate risk waste out of the waste stream. So it doesn't end up in our landfills, it doesn't end up in our streams and waters and in our groundwater, things like that. And this is moderate risk, could be anything from pesticides that are not used to oil-based paint to batteries to, it's a very long list of moderately toxic waste that we want to get appropriately disposed of. And so it is, this is something that is really operating well. Jill, help me. It's open year round, but then it's open Thursday, Friday, and Saturday each week, because it's got staffing there. And
and they're open 9 to 3.
9 to 3. Yeah.
Yep. Their hours are a little weird this month because of the holidays. They won't be open the Friday and Saturday of Christmas or New Year's weekend, but otherwise they're up and running 3 days a week.
Yeah, it's a great program, and we're very proud of it. Since its opening, they've helped remove 150,000 pounds of household hazardous waste from the citizens' homes And about 80% of that material then is either recycled or used as energy. They're able to use it in conjunction with another facility in the Puget Sound area to convert it to actual energy, which is pretty darn cool. So let us know. And Jill, I assume there's something on our website related to that as well?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And I'm sure you can find it if you get onto the county's website. Okay, there are two other things that I do want to share with you. And one is that this Monday, after a fair amount of work and effort by all our departments and with tremendous work by the commission themselves and our county administrator, Kathy Mulhall, we're at the stage where we are going to be adopting our 2022 budget. It was a particularly difficult year, I'll be frank with you about that, because of the impacts of COVID, that it really has affected much of our operations and our funding for that. But we are set to adopt it. Our budget will be set at 46.5 million. As far as our revenue, our expenditures are 49.7. So there is a gap there. And so we are having to draw this year out of our general fund. We have our general fund is basically our reserves. And we protect that steadfastly. But this year we had to draw about that difference there, which is about $3.2 million out of that fund. Last year, we anticipated to have to draw out of it too. Again, that's a COVID year. But thankfully, we were able to generate enough funding through sales tax and through other mechanisms that we're able to recoup that and rebuild back into our general fund. This year, we're hopeful that that indeed will be the case. We anticipate there's going to be a fair amount of building activity, primarily in the first district down by Malaga area. And so that will help to offset some of our funding shortfalls there. But it was a very difficult process for us to get to that point. And we asked each of our department heads to minimize their costs as much as they can. Last year, we asked them each to cut their cost by 10%, which was a very hard hit for them. But we're at the stage where we are comfortable now. We've had ongoing discussions with all our department heads and the other elected officials, and we're at the stage where we will be set to adopt it this Monday. So, any questions related to that? We need to borrow some money from Chelan PUD. I didn't get much response out of that.
I was waiting for Rachel to weigh in on that one, Bob.
Oh, well, so I have one more thing if I can do. I'll see if I can do another screen share here. Is the other thing that we've been working on, and I do want to thank Jill again for this, is that we've been working on our legislative priorities. And is that visible to you folks there? That works okay? Okay, so each year, in conjunction with the cities, with the PUD, with the port, the regional port, and with all the other elected officials within Chelan County, being our auditor, our assessor, our sheriff, our prosecuting attorney, treasurer, that we come up with a coordinated approach for some of our legislative outreach this year. And so we try to minimize it down to our top 5 or 6, if you will. And we have direct discussions then with Representative Gaynor, Representative Steele, and Senator Hawkins related to this. And it's an ongoing dialogue back and forth with them about it. You'll note that this one says draft to it. We are pretty much near final to this. We do this each year in conjunction with them, try to strengthen our process each year as far as our dialogue and work with the other jurisdictions and with the legislators themselves. If I can walk this through you, by far our priorities, this upper part here is the housing issue that we are really trying to put a lot of our efforts to address the affordable housing issue. And so these are two bills that are under consideration and actually being introduced. This first one, which is being introduced by Representative Steele in concert with us and others in great dialogue and great effort by Representative Steele, is to update a particular part of the statute. It doesn't have a bill number assigned to it yet. To allow surplus public property to be used for affordable housing up to 120% of the adjusted median income. What this means, the surplus public property. Chelan County, through a number of measures through the years, has received properties through various mechanisms that are now under county ownership. Some of these are relatively large, like there's a highly valued 20-acre block up in Chelan, right outside the city of Chelan, to small 0.7 acre, even smaller than that, pieces of property that we own. We want to get those off to the county ownership and back into private use here. And there are a number of administrative obstacles that prevent us from being able to do it. And I've been amazed at how difficult it is for us to surplus these properties. And Kevin Overbay, Commissioner Kevin Overbay from the 1st District put a yeoman's worth of work into this process here as well. And it's really been quite the effort to get them so that we can surplus them. Representative Steele has got some language that'll update this particular statute that allow us to better do that if we make it available for affordable housing. So I mentioned a 20-acre parcel up in the Chelan area that there's the Chelan Valley Housing Trust up there that we've got some great dialogue with them to be able to work with them to create some community land trust housing available, which is basically where some other entity owns the land, which is, is a significant value of a particular home. And then the structure itself would be owned by the homeowner. This makes it a great opportunity for entry-level homeowners to be able to move into and have a home and build equity. And so this one, we do believe that there's a very good likelihood of getting this one pushed through. We've been working in concert with Mayor Flora of Leavenworth and Mayor Getty of Chelan, making this thing happen. Tied in with that, then you see the next one is a Senate bill. This one is jointly sponsored by Senator Brad Hawkins in conjunction with Senator Cooterer, who lives up in the represents up, I believe, up in the San Juan Island area, where lodging is very difficult, and that tourism is a major part of that industry up there. We're looking at, I just described to you the lodging tax issue that, that we do receive funds and we make those available for tourism-based activities. This is something where we'd be able to use a portion of those funds to be actually able to also provide for housing affordability, with the concept that a lot of places like Leavenworth is a great example, where we have a very strong and vibrant tourism industry, but those individuals that provide a lot of the support for that industry, that those in the the service industry, those in medical industry, those are the schools, are not able to actually afford to live within that greater area. So this will provide some funding. Same concept, probably working with Upper Valley Mend would be a prime example for this, to provide some affordable housing. So that's a big issue that we're pushing in, and Senator Hawkins has been great to work with. This has been a big thing for Mayor Flora as well. He's been a real champion for this one. So we're working in concert with them. The next one going down is increasing Medicaid reimbursement rate, which is a huge issue that we've been discussing with Confluence Medical and Cascade Medical, is that each year the Medicaid reimbursement rate to those entities is going down and down, not keeping up with the actual costs. And so we're working consistently on this. This is a long-standing issue. We doubt that it'll actually be addressed in the short term, coming up short legislative session, but we want to bring it up. House Bill 1333 here, that one is, you may recall that I talked to you previously about the Cascade Public Infrastructure Fund, which is funding that we receive as a remittance from the state to provide for economic development projects. And what we do is we let out grants then through what's called the Capital Public Infrastructure Fund. And we are hoping to get an extension of that, because the funding process for this will be running out. And we think that this is a tremendous opportunity to encourage rural economic development. We focus all our funding of this, not all, but the predominant amount of our funding towards unincorporated areas within Chelan County. Moving on, then you see up here, natural resources. You recall Mike was talking earlier about pathways plan, and that we need to really start looking into the feasibility analysis for this. And so we are asking for a proviso. We've had discussions with our legislators about this. We're hopeful to get $250,000 for us to advance that pathways plan into some actual analysis and get us to the point where we can actually do some more implementation. There are a lot, this will actually help to pay for some of our community outreach efforts as well. And then another request of $100,000 to update the Wenatchee River in-stream flow rule. Again, this is something that Mike Kaputa was talking about earlier, that we really need to do some advanced work in securing, conserving, and managing more appropriately the water within the Wenatchee Basin, particularly the Icicle, the Chumstick, and Mission Creek drainages. There is a provision under the current in-stream flow ruling that Department of Ecology has for what river levels need to be at certain times of the year. This, we believe we got some new data coming in that allows for greater management, greater flexibility to both meet the in-stream flow targets and to allow for out-of-stream uses. And so we're asking for $100,000 for us to be able to do that. And then there are a couple of things down here that more on a statewide level. These are through our state public works program and through our Washington Association of Washington State Association of Counties. The initiatives, fish barrier removal has always been a big issue. We're still working on that. And then solid waste, even though we've got a tremendous solid waste program, we still want to strengthen it. And then there's the Public Works Assistance Account, which provides money for particular local projects, that getting money for county road improvements is critical. Cascade Orchard Bridge, the one that I mentioned previously on the Icicle, it's a great example of that. And so we're hoping that there'll be additional funding made available for that. And then there's a fair amount of federal funds that are available to the State Department of Transportation, but not necessarily available to us. And that we are working on an arrangement that if the money goes to the State Department of Transportation, the federal funds go to the State Department of Transportation. Some of the state funds can now come to us. It's kind of a wonky deal that is got some complexity to it, but evidently it's a fairly elegant solution to a problem that we have. And so that's the other legislative issue there. I really kind of ran through those pretty quickly. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts or anything along that line? This is a work in progress, but it's pretty darn close to being there. Yeah, hi, Betsy.
Hi. Yeah, I just wondered if the 120% average median income that was mentioned for the housing,
Yeah.
Is that across the board, or is that something that it varies with communities, or hasn't really been decided yet?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question that you brought up. Actually, that 120 is going to be the standard that we're shooting for statewide. Many communities are operating around that particular level. That unfortunately, this is kind of an interesting dilemma, that some housing affordability is mentioned in several laws that have been passed in the past couple of years. And the metric for the AMI changes from law to law. And so it makes for some pretty difficult interpretation and implementation of funding when funding from one source is at 80% AMI, another one's at 100, another one's at 120. It appears that there is a general movement towards the 120 that statewide. And so that is the standard. Even at 120%, I don't know what the average median income is, but if you're at 120%, you're still going to have a very difficult time buying a home in the greater Leavenworth area. And so, but this is so we wanted to have a high enough bar that many people, folks that school teachers, nurses, they'd be at the 120 AMI. So they'd be able to hopefully get to the point where they can afford a home. Yeah, thanks for your question.
Yeah, that clarifies that a bit. Thanks.
Other questions? Okay, well, that's kind of all the news that's fit to print there. Looks like I've gone a little bit over time there, so my apologies. We will have another meeting. We're hoping to do this on a quarterly basis, and I do want to thank Jill for everything that she's done to make this happen. I also really want to thank Mara Bowman and Chris. Looks like we might have missed Chris Clark here now. I noticed Chris was on earlier. Thank you both for your work to get these things organized. The next one, it would then be March 11th that we will shoot for that. And that again is the second Friday of the month. I had an interesting meeting earlier this morning with the Port Commissioner J.C. Baldwin, and she's very interested in joining me next time. So the next one will be a joint Port County dialogue. So I do appreciate the fact that your support on this stuff and everything like that. Please do not hesitate to get a hold of us if you have any questions or concerns from particularly related to the short-term rental issue as we try to work our way through that and kind of go from there. But if nobody has any questions or thoughts, I wish you all a happy holiday, and I sure hope that we get some snow here pretty soon. Pray for snow. So, okay,
Bob,
take care.
Thanks tons for doing this.
Yeah, you bet.
Great information.
Yep.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay, everybody take care. Be
Bye.
safe.
Thank you.
Yep, bye-bye.